What's going on, y'all? I am your host, Cool Colas, and you are now tuning into a new video on my channel. For today's topic, we're going to be going into detail about a topic that was requested of me by my lovely wife. And what she wanted me to talk about was who the real villain is of the movie He's Got Game. So let's get into it. For those of you all who either did not see the movie or it's been a long time since you've seen it, I want to give y'all a brief synopsis of what this movie is about. So the main character is this young man named Jesus Shuttleworth. He's a high school student and he's a basketball player. And he's known to be the best basketball player probably in the nation during this time period. And all of these different schools are trying to get him to commit to their program because they know he's going to be a star and eventually go to the pros. So they throw all this money and all these trinkets and things like that because they know there's going to be a benefit for them in the long run with this. Now, he isn't just being targeted by colleges. He also is potentially being used by other people in his life as well, too, such as his girlfriend and the people who raised him. Now, this movie also focuses on his journey with taking care of his little sister and also showing what his decision is going to be and what college he's going to commit to. The movie also focuses on Jake Shuttleworth, who is the father of Jesus Shuttleworth, and how he's trying to get out of his prison sentence upon murdering Jesus's mother. But he is told by the warden that if he can get his son to commit to the same alma mater as the governor upon his request, then he will grant him his freedom. And so the movie centers on what happens with that concept and then what also happens with Jesus and his life. For those of you who have watched the movie, I'm willing to bet that if you had to decide one person who is the villain of this movie, you probably would say that it's the character Lala. And for those of you all who did not watch the movie or are not aware of who I'm talking about, Lala is the girlfriend of Jesus Shuttleworth. And most people would believe that she's the villain because she was ultimately trying to use Jesus, and she did it in such a manipulative way, and it made her seem like the most conniving and malicious person out of everybody who was trying to use Jesus. Because there's a lot of characters that we could potentially say are the villain, because there's a lot of characters who try to use him throughout this movie. Now, the reason why most people would also say that Lala is the villain is because of the way that she went about trying to make it happen, because it's very familiar that a groupie would do something such as what Lala tried to do. For those of y'all who did not watch the movie, there is a scene where Jesus and Lala are talking and they have a discussion about, how things were when he went to college, or he went to one of the colleges to try to see if it was the right fit for him. And they got into an argument. And at some point during the argument, they talked about how she was pregnant at some point. But then they also gave extra details, such as the idea that when they were having sex, she was telling him that she wanted him to take the condom off because she wanted to feel him inside of her. But the thing was, she also told him that she couldn't get pregnant, so he decided to go along with it. And what ended up happening was she ended up getting pregnant, and he told her that she needed to have an abortion because he wasn't ready to be a father and he had a big career ahead of him and he did not want the child. During that conversation, she also complained about wanting to get paid, wanting to get a check, and wanting to be taken care of, because ultimately she believed that nobody was going to take care of her and that she had nothing going for herself. So she was trying to get a win off of Jesus' success. And I won't lie to you, after seeing that, it almost sold me. Just the idea that this woman, one, had lied, she was two, manipulative, three, she was a gold digger, and four, some could even argue that her lying about not being able to get pregnant and then allowing this man to basically shoot up in her was what some would say is ape with an R in front of it. So that alone would be grounds for me to say that she's a total villain and everything that she did was wrong. Not to mention the idea that she was also cheating on this man with one of the people who she wanted him to have a conversation with about potentially getting recruited to a certain college. But ultimately, I cannot give her the crown as the person who is the main villain of this movie. Now, who I have analyzed to be the main villain of this movie is somebody who I'm pretty sure a lot of fans of this movie would probably say is a character they actually liked and a character they actually enjoyed while watching this. So in 3, 2, 1, the main villain of the movie, He's Got Game, is Jesus's father, Jake Shuttleworth. And I'm going to go into detail about why he's the main villain. But one of the things that I need you to understand is that, as I've said in other videos, the main villain of these different takes where I talk about who is the villain of the movie, the true villain, is based on who creates the most issues for the main character or the characters overall in the course of the story. Jake Shuttleworth, while shown as having some honorable traits here or there, is definitely the villain of this movie. And he embodies something that I have talked about in my most recent book that I came out with May of last year. And I'm going to grab it for y'all to look at. The Pro-Black Blurred series, Exposing Anti-Black Media Tropes the Blurred Way, which you can get your copy either through me directly or on Amazon. But anyway, you're going to want to get this book, by the way, because I talk a lot about different tropes and agendas that happen in entertainment media, and I break it down so you understand what is happening. But in this book, I'm going to give you all a snippet. There is an agenda that I talk about called the Black Promised Land agenda. And this essentially is where the old niggas had this scheme in mind where they did not have any type of plan for their kids because they're not thinking about empire building when it comes to black empowerment and trying to have black people or black children who are going to be successful and are going to build up the community. So because they did not have a plan, they a lot of times would send their kids to college at the lowest level. But at the highest level, a lot of them would prepare their kids to be something like an athlete. And so a lot of times they would try to prepare their kid to either be some type of football player or basketball player because these were the main two sports where a lot of young black men would be successful at. They could get a scholarship and possibly get to the pros if they make it, because of course it is very hard to make it in the pros. And they push them and push them and push them until they get there. And the whole goal is for that child who they pushed, who they raised, to go and get a whole bunch of money from whatever they're successful in and then bring that back onto the family. So although it seems like there is some type of moral compass where they want this kid to prosper for themselves and then to raise their family and do great things, they ultimately are doing this because they know that it's going to be a cash cow for them in the long run. And they manipulatively train that kid to believe that they actually owe their parent for actually raising them in the first place. But we need to get more into that, y'all. Now, I won't sit here and act like Jake didn't have some good traits, because he did. And I'll get into why this is all important, but just to mention a few things. One thing that I liked about Jake was that he was a pretty hands-on father before he went to prison and before all this stuff happened where he ended up murdering the mother. He also was good when it came to discipline. He had a lot of great lessons that he was teaching his son. For some people that may seem harsh, but there were things that he said to his son and was teaching him that actually were very true. Another thing too, and this is where I also felt him, there were times too where people would try to tell him how to raise his kid or what not to say, what not to do. And that was very annoying. And as a man, as a black man especially, that is also annoying for me as well too. We as men, especially black men in this context, have this ability to naturally be able to give accountability and to look at things logically and to address and confront when there are issues that are taking place, and to also let people know and check people and say, hey, what you did here is not right and here's why. And ultimately, whenever you're dealing with somebody and trying to either check them or discipline them if they're a child, you always have some asshole in the back telling them, well, don't do this, don't do that. Well, you was wrong because this or that. Or they try to avert the attention while you're trying to give that constructive feedback or criticism. And there was even a scene where he was trying to discipline his son. And then there was a man back there saying, don't do this to the boy, don't do that to the boy. And he said, don't tell me how to discipline my son. And I was 100% with him on that. Now, here's the thing. Obviously, he did go overboard at a certain point. But my whole point here is that there is this big overarching thing that we are not allowed to be able to have our voice to discipline people or check people when they do us wrong. And then other people can just run interference and double team because they just have an opinion. No, that's not cool, because a lot of times that's us putting up boundaries or giving constructive feedback so we're able to make things better, or to at least tell somebody when something they have done is actually wrong. In the same way we're able to give constructive feedback and be objective with things is the same way that a woman should be allowed to be nurturing and to be able to be in her feminine energy in nature. Now, with that being said, one of the reasons why I brought up that there are some honorable traits is that typically whenever I look at these movies, these black movies that I saw back in the day, and I assess when there is a male character who is an actual villain, I notice that they tend to have honorable traits, or they are able to recognize the error of their ways, or they make this character apologize, or they just hold themselves accountable for when they have done something wrong. So even if they are the real villain that caused the main issues of the movie, they tend to make this character apologize for what they've done. And that's good, but they should do this with every character, not just if they are a black male character. With that being said, Jake wasn't shit. And I'm going to tell you why he wasn't shit. A lot of people are going to want to lean on Jesus' needing to forgive, everybody possibly being a villain and it can't be numbered down to Jake, or this idea that he was a great father who had all these different lessons that he was teaching his son. And they use all these things as distractions from the main issue, which is that Jake was the villain because Jake had some untapped issues and insecurities that he was dealing with, and he was projecting them onto Jesus. Now, follow me here, what I mean by this. Some of y'all understand this for, those of you who grew up and you had either a father or some type of father figure or whoever in your life, and they were like that sports parent, I don't know what to call it, but you had these parents who would go to these games and then they would just be wilding out and acting real crazy whenever they would watch their sons or daughters or whoever like compete in some type of competition. I'm going to speak for sons in this case. And a lot of them, will just be pushing and pushing and pushing and wanting their kids to just, take it all the way to the top. Now, to some extent, I can say that it's honorable that a parent, a father at that, would push their kid to the point where they're able to be the best version of themselves in whatever talent that they are trying to hone. And I can also say that it's a part of that parent's job to make sure that they do push their kid to a certain extent. And especially if you're a coach, you're supposed to push your players and those who you actually teach to do certain things on the field or on the court or whatever sport that they're doing. But at the same time, you had these parents who would just take it way too far. You had these fathers who would be in there shouting and screaming and cussing and fussing and whining and hoeing when they were watching these different kids perform in whatever sport that they were doing. And ultimately, one could lean on the idea that they're just being a good parent and they're just trying to push their kid and they're going overboard because they're passionate. But you have to understand the root of where that passion is coming from. A lot of these parents are living vicariously through their kids. So whenever a father or some type of father figure sees their son and they want them to be the best that they can be and they're over pushing them, it's because they have some type of pipe dream that they didn't get to live out themselves. So they try to live it out through that kid. And Jake Shuttleworth was trying to do this with Jesus's character, because there's even a scene where his mother says, sometimes I wonder, was the basketball thing because of the fact that your dad wanted it or because you actually wanted it? And so that points out the fact that Jake was doing this because it really was for him at the end of the day. And this is really consistent with Jake's chain of showing that he is manipulative and is doing it for the benefit of him. So even with him being a good father, that's just a crutch so he can justify his actions. But ultimately, if you look at the way that Jake behaves, you can see that he's doing everything that he's doing because there's some type of benefit for him, both in the past when he was raising his son and even in the present when he's trying to get out of prison for murdering the mother. Now, the main thing that I want y'all to pay attention to, and I'm going to say it multiple times because y'all are going to just look past it, and I want to bring this up. My main man, Marcus Bowden, has said this multiple times, and shout out to that brother because this is one of the best pieces of advice that he could have actually given me when I actually look at these different movies. Pay attention to the things that they do not tell you, or, and this is my nuance to it, or that they do not focus on. Notice that he always had some type of alcohol. He always had some type of drink. I'm going to say it again. Notice he always had some type of alcohol. Notice he had some type of drink. I'm going to say it one last time. Notice he always had some type of alcohol. Notice that he always had some type of drink. The reason why I'm bringing this up and I'm saying it 3 times is because this is one of the most important things that makes Jake the villain. Usually people use different substances because they're trying to cope with something else that they're dealing with. So he would often use alcohol as a coping mechanism for something else. And for somebody like Jake, with his behavior going over the top with his son, trying to train him to be the best basketball player ever, you can obviously see that there is something within him, some insecurity that is eating at him that he needs in order for him to be inebriated so he can be able to deal with what's happening in his life and the things that he's faced and why he feels, as he said himself, that he's another nigga. It's important because, and we're going to have to make a bit of an assumption and we're going to have to infer a little bit here, but it would infer that the reason why he's drinking was because he never got to live out his dreams and he's just an ordinary dude and he wants to see his son not be ordinary because he is ordinary himself and he never got to be in the pros and do all these other fly things that he sees his son is going to do in the future. So this is why he pushed him in the first place. So this is actually very selfish, and I'm going to tell you why. It's selfish because it goes back to what I said about the Black Promised Land trope, which is you had a bunch of these old niggas who were pushing their kids to the top when it came to sports because they knew that there was going to be some benefit for them. The first benefit for Jake would have been that he would have been able to, 1, live vicariously through his son. 2, he would have been able to take credit because of the fact that he raised him, which it's like, dude, you don't get brownie points for raising your kid. You're the one who chose to have your son. So now it's your responsibility. It's not like, hey, I'm supposed to get a reward because of the fact that I raised them. It would be nice if the kid did that back, when they ended up becoming successful and they said, yo, you raised me, you showed me love, you did what you had to do, so I'm gonna do something for you. It would be nice, but it's not a requirement. And number 3, the reason why, again, this is a benefit for him is because when he actually got into a jam, he could then go back and then use his son and say, well, look, if you sign on to this school, you make your whole decision based off of me getting out of prison, although I murdered your mama, then that would be good because I can get out based off of the fact that I raised you to become the best basketball player that you could possibly be. And that's why he kept leaning on, I'm your father, I'm this, I'm that, blah, 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 blah. Because at the end of the day, he believed that because he did so much to raise his son, that his son owed him to get him out of prison. But here's the thing about Jake's pipe dream, y'all. Jake's pipe dream resulted in Jesus losing his humanity and ultimately his childhood to a certain extent. He ended up having to be raised by his uncle and aunt who were really trying to scoop some money up out of him as well too. His girlfriend was trying to scoop some money out of him. Other college recruits were trying to scoop some money up out of him. And even his damn coach was also being manipulative with him as well too. Now some of y'all can say all these people are villains, and they are. But ultimately, his dad knows the game and he knows that all these things are going to come with it. He was very intelligent. And he still put his son in a situation where he had to deal with all of this. And he still put his son in a situation where he was the one who was taking care of his sister because of what he did. And the reason why I want to go back to the alcohol example is because ultimately the reason why he murdered, even though it was an accident, we know it's an accident, murdered the mother of Jesus, Shuttleworth, is because he was inebriated. He was so angry and he got violent. He got violent with his son. He got violent with his wife. And when he pushed her, she hit her head and all sort of stuff. She ended up dying. So this was totally his fault, no matter what way you want to swing it, no matter how much you want to say it was an accident or whatever the case may be. He deserved to get locked up for what he did. Now, with the whole prison sentence and him getting out, it was almost as if he was going back and saying, listen, dude, I haven't apologized yet. Not just for how I treated you, for the fact that I pushed you away, for killing your mama, or anything related to what you are going to have to face as somebody who is an athlete and has to make all of these decisions while still trying to be a person of integrity. But even beyond that, I don't have time to apologize to you. And I think he even said that to a certain extent. I don't have time to ask for forgiveness. But I need you to do this solid for me. I need you to help me get up out of prison. I need you to help me by committing to this school, not because it's important for you to choose a school that's good for you and to make a decision that's good for you, but because I'm your father and I love you, which is bullshit. And that's why I'm glad that they had the light-skinned brother who he was in the car with, who actually was spitting the truth, which is that all of these different people want to have money from you. You know, you got girlfriends who want money from you. You got college recruits who got money from you. You got your coach who wants money from you. And then you got this fake family. Or he said something to that extent. And I'm bringing that up to basically say this shows you that he was actually spitting the truth about what the actual issues were. And so this goes back into what I said about Jake. Jake is his father, and he was trying to basically, in so many words, say that because I'm your father, you owe me. And because I raised you, you owe me. So I need you to do me this solid and get me up out of prison, despite the fact that I'm the one who caused all this hell for you. Not just pushing you away, but putting you into a position where you have to grow up faster. And you also are going to have to watch your back with every single person you deal with, just because I tried to live out my dream that I was not able to live out because I'm incompetent. See, one thing that you need to understand about these old niggas is that they ultimately operate in deceit. They obviously don't have the power of the white supremacists, but they operate very similarly to them when it comes to the deception. They often use things such as distractions and red herrings and other things like that in order to manipulate their kids to not just do things for their benefit, but also to make them believe that they actually owe them when it's actually the other way around. And that's why even if you look at the uncle who raised Jesus and took him in after his father did what he did, he was trying to push up on him that he basically owed him and he needed some money, and he was trying to buy cars and all this other stuff early because he wanted Jesus to basically foot the bill on whatever he did and to be able to help him take care of him and to help him with his lifestyle and whatnot. And then you had Jesus going back and saying stuff like, I know, basically, and this is one thing I didn't like about Jesus, because I really liked his character. And I also liked that he had a pro-black element to him to a certain extent, minus the idea that I don't know what happened with the whole white girl thing. I don't know if that was true. I don't know if that was not. I don't know if it was a dream. But my point is that when it comes to the whole thing with Jesus, he was capitulating to that bullshit. He was out there talking about, so I know that you took care of me. You took my sister and me in when you didn't have to. So I owe you with interest. You know, he was going into all that shit. So they have you thinking that you actually owe them for them raising you. Like this is supposed to be their meal ticket as a result of them choosing to have you. You didn't ask to be born, but you are. And as a result, you don't owe that person for raising you. They made the choice to actually have you in the first place. And with Jake's character, he was assuming that because he told his son a few life lessons, that he owed him to basically help him get out of prison, which is wrong. And then this is why I said it's deceit, because they try to craft it into this whole ideal that, you know, it was more so about Jesus not being able to forgive his father than it was about the fact that his father was being conniving and manipulative. And at one point, he even said something to a certain extent, which was that, yeah, I need you to commit to this school so I can get out of prison. And he tried to make it seem like he was more right because of the fact that he was upfront about it. This is basically like Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z during the Android saga. Let me explain what I mean by that. The reason why I say that Jake was like Vegeta during the Android saga when Goku was fighting Android 19 is because he ultimately was trying to say that he was the only person who could use his son. Other people can't do that. So that's why he made it his mission to attack the person who he felt was being antagonistic and wouldn't do it in his face. And if you look at what was happening with Goku and Vegeta and Android 19, Android 19 was about to murk Goku because he had the heart condition and his energy was draining. He was losing his Super Saiyan form and all this other stuff. And so Vegeta, who has animosity towards Goku for his own reasons, basically kicked Android 19 and said, "Nobody kills Kakarot while I'm around. Destiny has reserved that right for me." The reason why I bring that up is because Vegeta was basically saying that I may not jail with him, but I'm the only one who can kick him. I'm the only one who can destroy him. I'm the only one who can murder him. I'm the only one who can use him. So Jake was basically saying, listen, I can beat him up, but you can't beat him up. Notice that he was manipulative and conniving, and he was trying to get his son to once again be used as a benefit to get him out of the situation that he was in. He also was very critical about other people who were using him, saying, well, no, I love you. And basically, I'm stabbing you in the front, whereas they all will try to stab you in the back, which is like, dude, okay, being truthful is something that you just should be, but some people just choose not to. But being conniving, deceptive, and still being a user and manipulative and horrible are still things that you are just like everybody else. Being truthful doesn't negate the fact that you are still conniving and you are still using me. That was the problem with Jake's character. And ultimately, he was playing this agenda that I would call when fire says poison is bad. So in other words, what I mean by that is, notice that he was doing a lot of conniving things and using his son, but then he was pointing out other people such as Lala, basically saying that, well, she's trying to use you. She's trying to, do all this other stuff. She's not really there for you and all and whatnot. And he's not wrong, of course. But again, it's like fire pointing out poison. It's like fire pointing out poison because y'all both are bad. I mean, it's like, what would I rather do? Would I rather put my hand in some fire or put my hand in some poison? Because either one of them are going to hurt me. Deception's a bitch, y'all. Because when it comes to deception, it's worse than lying, and from my perspective. Because with lying, yeah, you're not telling the truth to somebody's face, and they may or may not know it. But when it comes to deception, it's an advanced form of telling a mistruth. Because in a way, you're telling the truth to some extent. It's like a half-truth. You're telling the truth to a certain extent, but the way that you're framing it, you're twisting that truth around so that it justifies whatever manipulative narrative that you're trying to create. And it ultimately leads to gaslighting the person you're having a conversation with, allowing them to question their reality. And it's important to think about that because ultimately that's what this character, that being Jake Shuttlesworth, was doing with his son. He was basically saying, yeah, I'm using you. Yeah, I'm basically saying I need this favor. I need you to get me up out of prison. And yeah, I did push you too far. And yeah, I did ruin your life by forcing you to have to grow up much faster than you should have and to raise your sister when I should have been the person doing it. But I'm your father. And you have to understand that you have to honor me and you have to honor what I've done for you. That's why I said that that's deceptive, because he's telling the truth that he's his father and he should honor his father, but not the idea that as a result of him being his father, he should allow his father to use him and to manipulate him. Another thing that I really didn't like was the whole forgiveness message. See, the problem with our world when it comes to forgiveness, and there's a lot of problems, but I want to focus on this one specifically, is that people tend to focus on those who react to the forgiveness versus the initial offender. We're quick to tell somebody to put up boundaries or forgive quickly than we are to tell people not to mistreat and use and manipulate people in the first place. And the reason why this is important is because you had Jake, who was ultimately trying to tell Jesus throughout this movie that he needs to get the hate out of his heart. But it's like, my nigga, you don't have no right to tell me when or how I'm supposed to get over something when you're the one who did it to me in the first place. If a therapist wants to tell me that, then whatever. But you don't get that damn right. Especially if you haven't apologized, which Jake didn't. Jake believed that an apology was beyond him. He was like, I ain't got enough time for that shit. I don't have enough time to be talking about forgiveness and asking you for your forgiveness. I need this favor. Matter of fact, how about you play me and then we can decide it there. Shit, you're lucky that Jesus even gave you a chance to do the shit. You old bastard. Are you for real? You was sitting there and I mean, like, come on, like the audacity. No, I don't blame Jesus for going back and then telling dude, like, look, if you don't take your old ass on back to Atticus, I don't blame him for that, because you're trying to, first of all, you tried to live through me. You over pushed me and you pushed me away. You killed my mother. And then you were trying to use me in order to get out of prison and make me make one of the biggest decisions of my life based off of you being able to correct your mistake. And then after all this, you expect me to not be angry, have forgiven you, and to get the hate out of my heart? You lost your fucking mind. Had Jake not made the decisions that he made throughout this film, Jesus would have never went through any of the things that he went through. Now, I understand during that time period, it was much harder for a lot of us as foundational Black Americans to get a lot of things popping and to be successful at a multitude of different things. So he believed that that was the only way that he could, make his son successful. And then there also would bring up the question that what is the alternative? What does he do instead? But we need to understand that what he was doing wasn't mostly for his son. He could just lean back and say it was for him, but ultimately it was for himself. Because you can even see that drinking problem was still a thing, even when he was trying to get his freak on with the white prostitute. In this movie, I noticed a few things that I just wanted to bring up. Like, it's just heavy on my mind here. Number one, there was a lot of white woman worship in this movie, and there was a lot of brothers hooking up with non-foundational Black American women. Like, this was a big thing in this movie for some reason. And it's funny because I'm looking at these white women at these colleges, and they're all over these brothers who are athletes, and I'm like, I bet you those white women turned into Tommy Lorenz and damn Sarah Palins, and they done turned into Laura Ingrams and all this other shit. Like, if you think about it, white women are a trip, especially young white women in college. They're all, slutty and big old groupies whenever they see big mandingos who are playing sports in college. But as soon as they get out of college, boy, I'll tell you what, they turn into conservative white women and alt-right conservative white women. It's the craziest thing. But anyway, this movie was white woman worship heavy. And even too, correct me if I'm wrong, y'all, wasn't there a rumor out that Denzel, somewhere between the 1990s and the early 2000s, about him saying that he didn't want to have intimate relationships with white women on screen in his roles, or he didn't want to kiss them or something like that? And then in this movie, which was in 1998, he had an intimate relationship with a white prostitute who was very below average at that, and showed that on screen. That was weird to me. Anyway, y'all, as I said before, you have to learn how to separate the person with the talent from the talent itself. A lot of y'all like to conflate everything and have this hero bundle when it comes to these different actors. You like to basically say because this person is talented that they also have a good belief system. So you start equating the things that they believe or that they may believe to their work ethic. You say, hey, I should honor them and the things that they think and they say because they've shown me how good they are at whatever it is that they're talented with. And that's a very horrible ideology, because a lot of times what you find is that these people are very off code, despite the fact that they may either play an on code character or they just may be good at what they do. You all, like I said, have this kind of false hero complex where you believe that this individual is somebody who can be honored for every single thing that they do. or there's some type of exception. And ultimately, Denzel is one of the people who's used as a moniker for being someone who has the perfect mindset and also is the greatest Black American role model that you can see as an actor, instead of, again, separating the mindset and mentality from the talent. All right, y'all, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say, and I'll definitely have more to come in the future. In the meantime, I would love it if you like the video, subscribe, share this, and hit the bell icon so you'll get notifications for whenever I come out with new content on this channel. Other than that, y'all, I hope you all enjoy y'all's day, and I'll talk to you later. Peace out.